It was one of those rare Saturdays where everything felt just right. The sky was clear, the sun wasn't too hot, and the backyard smelled like summer. I had the grill going since noon, flipping burgers, laying out ribs, and making sure the corn on the cob was just the right amount of charred. My friends and neighbors were lounging around, drinks in hand, music low, kids laughing near the sprinklers. It was nothing wild, just a good old-fashioned backyard barbecue. But of course, peace doesn't sit well with everyone. From the second we started setting up, I noticed her. You probably know someone like her too. Arms crossed, eyes locked on every move we made. Karen. Not her real name, but you get the idea. She lives a couple houses down. No smile, never waves. Always acting like she's guarding some royal estate instead of a suburban block. The kind of person who measures your grass and counts how many guests you have. I had seen her peeking through the blinds earlier that morning when I set up the lawn chairs. Then again when I wheeled out the cooler full of soda and water. And just before lunch, she actually came outside. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd say something neighborly. But nope. She just stood there with her arms crossed, staring at the smoke from the grill like it was a personal attack on her airspace. Still, I didn't think much of it. This wasn't our first barbecue. We've had family get-togethers before. We keep the volume low, clean up after ourselves, and never run past quiet hours. But Karen? Karen doesn't care about any of that. She doesn't believe in live and let live. She believes in rules. Her rules. So when I saw her disappear back into her house, I figured she was done staring. Maybe she'd finally decided to let it go. Spoiler alert, she hadn't. About 20 minutes later, as I was flipping the second batch of burgers, my cousin walked over with his phone. Hey, is that Karen on her porch, talking to the cops? I turned my head and sure enough, there she was. Phone in hand, pacing back and forth, one hand flying in the air like she was reporting a national emergency. I couldn't hear her words, but her tone was clear. Urgent. Dramatic. Like something awful was happening. I could almost guess what she was saying. There's a huge gathering, too many people, smoke everywhere. I think they're disturbing the neighborhood. Mind you, it was 4:30 in the afternoon. The kids were playing tag. The adults were just chatting. Nobody was drunk. No one was being loud. But to Karen, a couple families enjoying grilled hot dogs was enough reason to call the cavalry. I'll admit the moment was tense. Everyone noticed her. People started whispering. A few looked annoyed. My aunt actually started collecting plates like the party was about to end. And I get it. No one wants to deal with cops showing up uninvited. Especially not over something so small. And definitely not when you're just trying to make sure the burgers don't burn. But here's where it gets interesting. You know how they say timing is everything? Well, that day it really was. Because as Karen stood there reporting our crime, a black SUV slowly rolled down the street. Not a police cruiser, an unmarked vehicle. No lights. No sirens. Just calm and quiet. It pulled into the driveway right next to mine. The door opened, and out stepped someone with a big grin, holding a tray of marinated chicken wings in one hand and a six-pack in the other. He waved and yelled out, "Hope you've still got space on that grill." My neighbors started clapping. A few even cheered. But Karen? Her jaw practically hit the floor. She stared at him like he'd just stepped off a spaceship. You could see the confusion all over her face. Because that man, smiling, laughing, walking up like this was the best day ever, was none other than the town's police chief. And he wasn't just a guest. He was one of the people who helped plan this barbecue. And as you're about to see, that's when everything changed. The look on Karen's face said it all. She went pale, then red, then pale again. You could practically see her brain trying to make sense of what just happened. She had called the cops to shut us down, and the man who stepped out of the SUV was the exact person she hoped would handle us. Only he wasn't here to break up a party. He was here to join it. Chief Daniels wasn't just some distant figure in a badge. He was someone we actually knew. Someone who'd been part of this neighborhood long before Karen moved in. He coached Little League. He helped organize our block's safety meetings. And most of all, he was the kind of guy who loved a well-done brisket more than any patrol report. He walked up like he owned the backyard. Everyone was laughing, shaking his hand, giving him a plate. He nodded at me, looked at the grill, and said, "Those burgers better not be burnt, or I'm calling the fire department." That one joke cracked the tension like a dropped glass. Even the kids started laughing. The adults relaxed again. But not Karen. She was still on her porch, holding her phone like it was a weapon she hadn't fired yet. I saw her glance at the SUV again, then back to the phone. I could tell she was trying to figure out if she should still go through with her report. Maybe she thought there was a chance another officer might show up. But by now it was clear. The person in charge had just walked into the backyard, grabbed a paper plate, and was piling it high with potato salad. Then she did something odd. She came down the sidewalk. Slowly. Like she wasn't sure if she should walk into enemy territory or just pretend this was a misunderstanding. She got close enough for the chief to see her, and that's when the moment we'd all been waiting for finally arrived. "Hi," she said, kind of stiff, eyes shifting between the grill and the guests. Chief Daniels turned, gave her a wide smile. "Well, hey there, Karen. Glad you could join us." She didn't smile back. "I wasn't aware this was an official event," she said, trying to sound polite but obviously struggling. "Oh, it's not official," he replied. "Just friends getting together. Good food, good people. You know, neighbors doing neighborly things." You could almost hear her grind her teeth. "Well, I had called earlier," she added, glancing awkwardly at her phone. "There was quite a bit of smoke. And I wasn't sure if it was legal." He chuckled. "Karen, we're using a backyard smoker and a standard grill. Perfectly legal. And unless someone's blasting fireworks or starting a bonfire without a permit, you've got nothing to worry about." She blinked. "So, you're saying it's fine?" He looked around at the peaceful backyard, kids tossing a football, people chatting, the soft sound of jazz playing in the background, and then looked back at her. "I'm saying this is exactly what this neighborhood needs more of." That right there? That was the final nail. Karen didn't have much to say after that. She stood there a second longer, then muttered something like, "Just making sure," before turning and walking away. Not quite storming off, but definitely defeated. We watched her go, and a few people exchanged looks, trying not to laugh. But no one said anything too loud. We just let it go. The chief gave me a wink, took the tongs from my hand, and started flipping burgers like he'd been doing it all day. It was like he'd stepped in not just to calm a situation, but to send a message: you can enjoy your life, and no one gets to bully you out of it, especially not in your own backyard. What made it even better was how normal everything became again within minutes. Conversations picked back up. Someone turned up the music just a bit. My aunt brought out her famous peach cobbler. And the grill? Still sizzling. The party hadn't stopped. If anything, it got better. And all while Karen stood behind her curtains again, this time watching a celebration she had no power to ruin. About 10 minutes after Karen walked off, it was like she'd never been there at all. The air felt lighter. The tension melted. It was almost funny how fast the mood shifted once we all realized the police weren't coming to shut us down. They were already flipping burgers. Literally. Chief Daniels stood by the grill like a pro. He took off his sunglasses, set his badge gently on the table beside the ketchup, and grabbed a pair of tongs like it was second nature. "All right, who's still waiting on a well done?" he called out, scanning the plates. A few people raised their hands, and he nodded like a man on a mission. My uncle leaned over and whispered, "If he runs for mayor, I'm voting twice." That got a few chuckles. The chief wasn't just flipping patties. He was making everyone feel safe, relaxed, and more connected than we had in a long time. He didn't talk about the call Karen made. He didn't need to. His presence alone handled that. The smell of grilled onions filled the air. Someone passed around a new tray of hot dogs. The kids came running for seconds. Even the older neighbors, the ones who usually kept to themselves, wandered over with curious smiles. Meanwhile, my cousin pulled me aside and said, "Man, I thought we were done for when I saw her on the phone." "Same," I nodded. She really thought the cops would storm in and drag us off the lawn. Instead, he laughed, they're manning the grill and asking for extra pickles. That's when it really hit me. Karen didn't just misjudge the situation, she misjudged the people around her. She thought a badge meant backup for her petty complaints. She thought authority would silence a community just trying to enjoy a meal together. But what she didn't know was that relationships matter more than rules. And the chief wasn't just a man in uniform, he was one of us. At some point, someone grabbed a speaker and asked if we wanted music requests. A wave of songs started to play, everything from old-school funk to soft country. People danced. Some swayed in their chairs. And right in the middle of it, Chief Daniels was laughing with my dad about who had the better grill at home. Across the yard, I saw Karen's blinds shift again. Just slightly. Enough to see a sliver of her face. She was still watching. Still keeping tabs. Maybe wondering how this whole thing had flipped so fast. Maybe thinking twice before calling in backup next time. But we didn't care anymore. Her phone call had become background noise. Just another story we'd laugh about later. And it wasn't just about her. It was about what came after. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in months were now eating at the same table. Kids from different streets were playing together. Even the new couple who moved in last week finally joined us and brought some drinks over. Everyone had something to share. A story. A side dish. A joke. At one point, the chief tapped a plastic cup with his fork and said, "I've got the next round of burgers coming. Who's ready?" Hands shot up. Cheers followed. And just like that, the backyard barbecue wasn't just a party. It had turned into something bigger: community, connection, and a little reminder that some people may stir trouble, but most people just want to enjoy life and eat good food. It was strange how a situation that could have turned sour instead became the highlight of our weekend. Not because something big happened, but because someone small tried to ruin it, and failed. And while the chief was stacking burgers onto buns, I caught him looking toward Karen's house for just a second. He didn't wave. He didn't say anything. Just a quiet smile. A smile that said, "Nice try. But not today, asterisk." And with that, he passed a loaded plate to my cousin, wiped his hands, and grabbed another cold soda like it was the most normal Saturday in the world. As the evening sun started to sink lower, that golden hour glow wrapped around everything. The grill, the chatter, the easy laughter. People weren't in a rush to leave. They dragged chairs into little clusters, plates balanced on their laps, drinks refilled with no one counting. You could feel it in the air. This wasn't just a gathering anymore. It was a memory in the making. Chief Daniels was still there, leaning casually against the picnic table with a rib in one hand and a napkin tucked into his shirt like he was born for backyard cookouts. A couple of the teens were asking him questions, not about law, but about grilling. He answered every one of them with a grin, explaining the right way to season meat and when to flip without drying it out. If anyone had any leftover tension from Karen's little stunt earlier, it was long gone now. It had melted away, just like the ice in the coolers. One of the neighbors, Mrs. Harding, probably in her 70s, walked over to the chief and handed him a slice of homemade peach pie. "You earned this," she said, "for keeping the peace and the burgers perfect." He tipped an imaginary hat. The highest honor. I spotted my neighbor Troy, who never says more than 3 words at a time, chatting with my dad like they were old friends. And that's when it hit me. This barbecue had done something special. Not just because Karen's plan backfired in the funniest way possible, but because her attempt to shut us down had actually brought us closer. It was like she lit the match that made us shine brighter. I went over to refill my drink and caught part of a conversation between 2 guests I didn't even know. They were from the next street over, invited by someone who knew someone, and they were already asking when the next barbecue would be. That's how good the vibe was. Strangers felt at home. Meanwhile, a couple of the kids had set up a little game of beanbag toss near the fence. No prizes. No rules. Just laughing and trying to outdo each other. You could hear one of them yelling, "That was totally in," while the other shouted, "You're blind, bro." And everyone else was too busy enjoying the moment to care who was winning. I glanced toward Karen's house again. The curtains were drawn tight now. No more peeking. No more pacing. Just a dark window. Maybe she was still watching from behind it. Maybe not. But even if she wasn't part of the picture anymore. The only sounds now were voices rising and fading, the occasional clink of a fork on a plate, the soft shuffle of someone turning up the music just a bit more. Someone had put on a playlist full of old-school soul, and it played like a soundtrack to the perfect summer evening. Then, as if on cue, Chief Daniel stood up and called out, "All right, final round of burgers. Any last takers before I officially retire the tongs?" A bunch of hands went up. "Good," he said, "because I didn't come all this way to take leftovers home." He walked back to the grill and gave it one last fire up. Smoke curled into the air, slow and steady. People started forming a loose line, not rushed, not chaotic, just hungry and happy. I stood near the cooler, sipping from my cup, and just took it all in. From across the yard, my cousin nudged me and said, "This turned out way better than I thought." "Yeah," I nodded. "Karen really did us a favor." He laughed. "Might have to send her a thank you card." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Because sometimes the people who try the hardest to ruin your fun end up reminding everyone else how much that fun actually matters. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, the backyard felt like a scene from a movie. Not the kind with explosions or drama, but the kind you wish you could rewind and live again. There was something about that sunset that made the laughter sound louder and the food taste better. Maybe it was just the relief. Maybe it was the satisfaction of knowing that no one, not even Karen, could ruin this day. Chief Daniels handed off the final burger with a proud grin and finally sat down to eat. His shirt was stained with barbecue sauce, his hair a little messy from the heat, and yet he looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. It's not every day you see the town's top cop munching on a double cheeseburger in your backyard like he's just one of the guys. And that's exactly what made it all so perfect. There was no formality, no titles, no lines drawn. Just neighbors and friends sharing a summer evening. More chairs had been dragged in by now. People who had said they'd just stop by for a minute were still here, swapping stories like they'd been close for years. I overheard someone telling a fishing story that clearly grew more dramatic with each retelling. Another neighbor tried to prove they made better coleslaw than my aunt, which led to an unplanned taste test. I won't say who won, but my aunt walked away smirking. Even the pets joined in. Someone had brought their golden retriever, and the dog trotted happily between groups, tail wagging like it had known everyone its whole life. A little girl shared her chips with him while her dad tried to convince her not to. But no one really cared. It was just that kind of night. Every once in a while, someone would glance toward Karen's house. Her porch light had come on, but the blinds stayed shut. No footsteps. No second attempt to cause trouble. Just a quiet house pretending it wasn't there. It was strange, how much power she tried to have over this moment earlier, and how little space she ended up taking in the story. A few people joked about it, but gently. No one wanted to give her too much attention. She had already taken her shot. And honestly, we were all too busy enjoying what she failed to stop. Someone set up a few lawn games in the far corner, horseshoes, cornhole, even a ring toss someone pulled from their garage. It didn't matter who won. The cheering and the laughter were the real prize. Every toss, every high five, every friendly joke added another layer to the moment. It was like we were all quietly agreeing to make this night count. The chief, after finishing his food, stood up and stretched. "All right," he said. "I've got a shift starting in the morning, so I better head out before someone hands me dessert and I never leave." People clapped and thanked him. He gave a few handshakes, a couple hugs, and waved one last time before walking to his SUV. As he got in, he looked over at me and said, "Next time, I'm bringing my special marinade. So don't plan anything without me." I laughed. "You're on, Chief." And just like that, he drove off, leaving behind more than just tire marks. He left a message. One Karen would never forget. One that said, loud and clear, "This is our space, our moment, and no one gets to take it away." The lights in the backyard twinkled on as the sun disappeared completely. Someone lit a few citronella candles, and the soft glow mixed with the low hum of music and chatter. No one was ready to pack up just yet. We knew we'd have to, eventually. But for now, no one wanted to be the first to say goodbye. It felt like we were holding on to something more than just a fun day. It was unity. It was pride. It was the quiet joy of knowing that even in a world full of Karens, kindness and community still win. The night had fully settled in by the time someone brought out the string lights and draped them across the fence. They didn't just light up the yard, they gave it a glow that felt like magic. People were still laughing, still talking, still grabbing seconds from the snack table like the party had just started. No one wanted to leave. And honestly, no one felt like they had to. The playlist had shifted to old-school slow jams now. Not loud, just smooth enough to hum along while folks shared stories under the stars. There was no rush to wrap things up. It was one of those rare moments when time felt like it paused, just to let us soak it all in. I looked around and saw how easy everyone looked. Shoes kicked off, plates balanced on knees, strangers becoming friends over grilled corn and homemade brownies. My aunt was sitting with the new neighbors, showing them pictures of her garden. A group of teenagers had set up a tiny dance floor near the fire pit using a Bluetooth speaker and their phones. And off in the corner, two dads were deep in a debate about who made the best ribs that night. That's the kind of energy this whole evening had become: warm, familiar, effortless. The kind you wish you could bottle and save for when things get stressful again. And somewhere in the middle of it, I noticed something else. More than half the people here weren't even part of the original invite list. They were friends of friends, neighbors of neighbors. Some had just followed the smell of barbecue and the sound of laughter. Nobody turned them away. No one asked, "Do you live on this street?" Everyone just said, "Grab a plate." That's the thing about real community, it expands. It doesn't shrink when things get tense. It grows. And that night, it grew faster than Karen could have ever imagined. She had tried to control it, to stop it, to report it like it was some sort of disturbance. But what she didn't realize was, you can't call the cops on joy. You can't shut down unity. And you definitely can't stop a group of good people with a phone call, especially when the person on the other end of that call is already holding the tongs. I overheard one of the neighbors joking, "If Karen's smart, she'll start coming to these things. Might soften her up a bit." The idea made everyone laugh, but no one really believed it. Some folks just like to be angry. But that didn't matter anymore. She wasn't the main character in this story, not tonight. Another neighbor brought out jars of lemonade and sweet tea like we weren't already full. But of course, everyone took a glass. Someone else had brought marshmallows and was trying to build a tiny fire in the pit. It took a few tries, but they got it going. The kids lined up with sticks, and suddenly it was s'mores time. You should have seen the way people were smiling, faces glowing from the flames, melted chocolate on fingers, graham crackers crunching between bites. It wasn't just a barbecue anymore. It was a reminder that we all still need this. This break. This breath. This moment where things are simple and safe and full of flavor. Even the folks who usually kept to themselves, those hello and wave kind of neighbors, stayed longer than usual. You could see how comfortable they'd become. Like something cracked open inside them, and they finally decided to be part of something. One lady, Ms. Lila, who lived alone at the end of the street, said softly to my mom, "It's been years since I sat around a fire like this." She smiled after saying it, but you could tell that one sentence held a lot. My mom reached out and touched her hand. "You're always welcome here," she said. And she meant it. The fire crackled a little louder. The lights above flickered as a breeze rolled through. And the night kept moving, soft and steady. No announcements. No speeches. No attention on what went wrong earlier. Just people, sharing stories, passing plates, and realizing that maybe the best moments in life happen when someone tries to ruin them and fails. A little after 10 p.m., the fire pit had burned down to glowing embers. The music was still playing, soft now, blending with the sound of distant crickets and the occasional laugh from someone retelling the same joke for the third time. You could feel that the night was winding down, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. People had shifted into that cozy, late-night rhythm. The kind where voices drop just a bit and conversations get more real. It wasn't about food anymore. It wasn't about Karen. It wasn't even about the party. It was about that rare comfort you feel when you're exactly where you're supposed to be, surrounded by people who get it, even if they just met you that evening. I sat back in one of those foldable chairs that always lean too far if you move wrong, holding a plastic cup that had turned mostly into melted ice. Across from me, my cousin was half asleep with his hoodie pulled over his face. Someone had laid a blanket across 2 lawn chairs for the kids who had finally passed out after running around for hours. There was something peaceful about that moment. No drama, no rush, just the hum of a night that chose not to be ordinary. And for some reason, my eyes drifted back toward Karen's house. Still dark. Still quiet. Her porch light was off now. No more peeking, no more pacing. Maybe she had finally realized that nothing she did was going to stop this from happening again. Not just the barbecue, but the connections. The neighborhood she tried to control had started to bond over her bad behavior. I didn't feel angry about it anymore. Honestly, I felt grateful. Her call to the cops had been the start of something she never saw coming. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the one person she hoped would side with her was standing in the center of everything she despised. The music, the laughter, the smoke from the grill. And he didn't just approve of it, he was flipping burgers in the middle of it. That twist? It still made everyone smile hours later. One of the teens, the same kid who had been asking grilling questions earlier, walked up to me and said, "I didn't even know the chief was that chill." "Neither did Karen," I said, and he cracked up. There was a moment of silence after that. One of those calm breaks in the noise where you realize how rare it is to feel that full and content. I could hear someone quietly humming a tune near the cooler, and a few folks had moved closer to the fire, their faces glowing like lanterns in the night. It didn't matter who came from where, or who had known each other the longest. None of that was important anymore. What mattered was that for one evening, a group of people who shared the same street also shared something else, a sense of unity. Of showing up for each other, even if it started with nothing more than an invite and a plate of ribs. And it was wild to think how close we'd all come to missing it. If Karen hadn't made that call, if the chief hadn't shown up, if we'd let her ruin the vibe instead of letting it roll off our backs, we might have just had a regular, forgettable afternoon. But now we had stories, connections, phone numbers exchanged, plans made for a potluck next month. There was even talk of a Halloween block party. People were already assigning dishes and decorations like it was a done deal. This wasn't just about tonight. It had become something that would ripple through the whole neighborhood. I took another sip from my cup, now mostly water, and leaned back. No one had left in a hurry. No one had said goodbye with their keys already in hand. They lingered. Because for the first time in a long time, we weren't just living near each other. We were living with each other. And it all started with one angry phone call that led to one perfect, unforgettable night. Somewhere close to midnight, people finally began to pack up, but no one was in a rush. The clatter of folding chairs, the soft chatter as leftovers were sealed into foil, and the scrape of grill grates being cleaned mixed into the quiet rhythm of the night. You could tell everyone was tired, but in that good, satisfied way, like after a long road trip or a holiday dinner. There wasn't a single person who left without smiling. Every goodbye took 10 minutes. Every "thanks for having us" came with a hug or a handshake. And nearly every person said the same thing. Asterisk, let's do this again. I helped carry in a tray of half-eaten desserts while my cousin wrapped up the speakers. Even the kids who'd fallen asleep on lawn chairs earlier had been scooped up gently and taken home, some still clutching a half-eaten cookie or a marshmallow stick. The last of the guests slowly trickled out under the soft glow of porch lights and string bulbs still swaying in the breeze. It was the kind of night you don't forget, not because something huge happened, but because of all the small things that added up to something meaningful. I walked around the backyard one more time. Plastic cups on tables, crumpled napkins in corners, half-drunk lemonade on the steps. It was a mess, sure, but it was a beautiful mess. The kind that says this meant something. And across the way, Karen's house sat completely still. No lights. No movement. Just dark windows and a quiet front yard. Earlier in the day, she had tried to shut down the party before it even really started. Now she was shut out of it entirely. She had made her call. She had waited for backup. She had expected sirens, citations, maybe even someone getting hauled off for violating some noise policy she clung to like a rulebook. But what she got was something far more powerful. She got ignored, outpaced, outnumbered by joy, food, and the sound of people coming together. The police didn't come to shut us down. The chief came to eat. I think that's the part that really shook her. People like Karen thrive on attention. They count on fear, on people folding under pressure. But when none of that worked, when she saw her authority crumble the second Chief Daniels walked in with chicken wings and a six-pack, she lost all her power. And in return, we found ours. Not the loud kind. Not the in-your-face, angry, vengeful kind. Just steady, quiet, powerful connection. That night turned neighbors into friends. Turned strangers into family. And maybe, just maybe, turned a quiet, cold block into the kind of place where people waved from their driveways again. A few minutes later, I sat down at the now empty picnic table, the same spot where the chief had set his badge earlier that afternoon. I took out my phone and saw a new neighborhood group chat blowing up with thank yous and pictures from the night, kids with chocolate-covered faces, selfies with the chief, plates piled high with ribs and coleslaw. Someone had even changed the name of the chat to BBQ Defense Squad. And then came a message from a number I didn't recognize. Thanks for tonight. Never felt more welcome in a neighborhood before. Count us in for whatever's next. That was it. That's the kind of moment that sticks with you. Not because it was loud, but because it was real. And I knew then that whatever next looked like, another cookout, a block party, or even just more friendly waves from across the street, it was going to be better. Stronger. Because we had already made it through the test. Not just Karen. Not just a phone call. But the test of whether a group of people could decide that kindness, food, laughter, and a little music were worth more than drama, complaints, or control. We passed that test. Not by fighting, but by flipping burgers, pouring lemonade, and letting the good moments speak louder than the bad ones ever could.